It started with a knock, soft, hesitant, but insistent. Maya wiped her hands on a dish towel and opened the door to find her younger sister, Jules, standing on the porch with two duffel bags and eyes rimmed red from crying. Rain clung to her hoodie like it had nowhere else to go. "Can I stay here for a few days?" Jules asked. Her voice was the same mix of vulnerable and defiant it had always been, like she was bracing for rejection. Maya blinked. "What happened?" "I just need a place, please." Maya stepped aside. The spare room still smelled like lemon wood polish. It had been clean for months, untouched except for when Maya vacuumed or placed fresh flowers on the dresser like a ritual. It had once been their mother's room, before the cancer, before the hospice bed, before the silences that dragged between painkillers. Jules didn't say a word as she dropped her bags beside the bed and collapsed onto it, hugging her knees to her chest. Her makeup had bled into the collar of her hoodie. Maya leaned against the doorway. "Do you want to talk about it?" Jules gave a tired shrug. "He cheated. With someone from work? I came home and there were wine glasses in the sink. I recognized the lipstick." Maya felt her throat tighten. "God, Jules, I'm so sorry." "Yeah." A pause. "Me too." Over the next few days, Jules drifted like smoke from room to room. She barely spoke. She barely ate. Maya cooked and cleaned and gave her space. That's what you do with grief. You make space for it. You wait it out. You let it rot quietly in the corners. But grief wasn't the only thing making itself at home. On the fifth day, Maya found a check stub in the trash bin by the spare room, a payment of $3,800 from an account with their father's name. The problem was, their father had passed away 4 years ago. His estate was long settled, every cent divided cleanly, at least Maya had believed it was. She stared at the stub until her hands shook. Then she picked up her phone. "Hey, Jules?" she called out. "Yeah? Can I talk to you for a second?" They sat at the kitchen table, the stub between them like evidence in a courtroom. Jules didn't touch it. She just looked out the window like there was something fascinating about the way the neighbor's cat was stalking a squirrel. "You told me Dad left us equal shares," Maya said. Her voice wasn't angry yet, just broken. "You handled the lawyer, the paperwork. You said everything was done properly." Jules's jaw tensed. "It was." "Then what's this?" Look, it's complicated." Maya stood. "Make it simple." Jules flinched, but didn't back down. "Dad set up a trust for me, quietly, before he died. I didn't think it mattered because he said it wasn't about the money. It was just to make sure I had something. I was going through a rough patch, and—" "You've always been going through a rough patch, Jules." That landed like a slap. "You think I asked for that trust?" Jules said, her voice rising. "You think I wanted to be the one who got more while you stayed here and took care of Mom and cleaned her blood out of the sheets?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Maya didn't sleep that night. Her mind kept retracing everything, every moment when the money could have changed things. When she'd maxed her credit card to pay for Mom's meds. When the mortgage almost slipped into foreclosure. When she skipped therapy because it was too expensive. Jules had let her drown, quietly, passively, with trust fund buoyancy and just enough guilt to keep it secret. The next morning, Maya didn't mention the check. She poured coffee. She packed Jules a sandwich before work. She smiled like nothing was burning beneath her skin. But the plan was already forming. 3 days later, Maya called her cousin Natalie, who worked in probate law. "I just need you to look at something," Maya said. "Hypothetically." She emailed over a few documents Jules had left lying around. A trust agreement, a letter from their father, bank statements dating back years. Natalie called her back an hour later. "This isn't hypothetical, is it?" Maya swallowed. "What happens if I challenge it? If you're right, if your father's trust was meant to be disclosed during the estate settlement, you could have grounds for a lawsuit, misrepresentation, potential fraud. Would I win? You'd scorch the earth, Maya." Jules came home that night and found Maya at the kitchen table again. There was no check this time. Just a printed letter, drafted and unsigned, addressed to the estate attorney. "What's this?" she asked. Maya didn't answer. She pushed it across the table. Jules read it, and as her eyes scanned down the page, her face changed. The mask cracked. She looked older in that moment, ashamed, exhausted, maybe even afraid. "You wouldn't," she said. Maya's voice was calm, icy, controlled. "You stole my peace of mind, my years. You lied and let me suffer. I don't care about the money, I care about knowing." Jules leaned against the counter. Her hands trembled. "You want me to leave?" she said. "No," Maya said. "I want you to stay, in that room, with those walls, until you understand what it felt like to sleep in silence while someone else carried the weight." Jules looked at her like she was seeing her for the first time. "I'm not going to sign it," Maya said softly. "Not yet, but if you ever lie to me again, I'll file this so fast your heels won't hit the floor." The air between them was thin. Jules moved around the house like she was afraid of making noise. She tiptoed through mornings, made herself scarce in the afternoons, and disappeared into the spare room before sunset. She didn't touch the stove, didn't dare turn on the TV, didn't even refill her coffee cup without glancing toward Maya first. Maya, for her part, said nothing. She just watched. She watched Jules flinch when the doorbell rang, watched her face tighten when Maya casually placed mail on the table, a credit card statement, a flyer from the estate firm, watched her walk past their mother's photo on the hallway wall without looking up. The house felt heavier than it ever did when their mother was dying. And still, Maya didn't file the letter. It was Saturday morning when things cracked. Maya had just come in from trimming the hedges when she heard Jules's voice, low and muffled, coming from the kitchen. She paused near the hallway, unseen, listening. "I'm trying, okay? I messed up. I know I messed up, but she won't even let me speak now. She just watches me like I'm some experiment." A beat of silence, then, "No, I can't go back to Ryan. That's done. I don't care if he still pays the lease." Maya stepped in then, catching Jules mid-sentence, phone half lowered. Their eyes met. "You talking about me, or just venting to whoever's next on your apology tour?" Maya asked. Jules ended the call without a word. Later that night, Maya sat in her room staring at an old family photo. It was from a 4th of July picnic years ago, back when things still felt real. Her dad's arm was around her mom, Jules had frosting on her nose from the cake, and Maya was in the background, holding the camera's timer remote. Always the one capturing, never the one in the middle. She heard soft footsteps outside her door, and the telltale creak of the hallway floorboard. Then a knock. Maya didn't answer, but the door opened anyway. Jules stepped in quietly, holding a faded shoebox. She didn't sit, just placed it gently on the edge of Maya's bed and opened it. Inside were letters, dozens of them, handwritten envelopes, some in their father's careful print, some unopened. "I didn't just get a trust," Jules said, voice trembling. "He wrote to me, for a year, after the diagnosis. He asked me not to tell you. Said he didn't want to put more on your plate. Her voice broke. "I didn't know how to explain it once he was gone." Maya picked up a letter. The paper was yellowing, creased at the corners. She read one line, then another. Then her throat closed. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She kept replaying their dad's words. "Jules is fragile, Maya. But you're steel. You always have been." It was meant as a compliment. It didn't feel like one. Because while she'd been burning at both ends, caring for their mother, managing the house, paying off debt, Jules had been wrapped in a different kind of grief. A silent one, hidden behind envelopes and secrecy and all the things their father never gave Maya. Softness, tenderness, protection. She felt robbed all over again. The next morning, Maya was at the kitchen table when Jules walked in. She didn't wait for Jules to speak. "I'm not ready to forgive you," she said. Jules nodded, her face hollow but calm. "I don't expect you to. But I'm not filing that letter either. Not yet. Because maybe this isn't just about the money." Jules looked at her then. really looked at her, with something like humility in her eyes. "I want to fix this," she said quietly, "whatever it takes." "You can't," Maya replied, "but you can start by staying, not hiding, not running, and not pretending like that room is a shield." Jules opened her mouth to say something, then closed it again. She turned toward the hallway, paused, and said, "I'll repaint it." Maya blinked. "What?" "The spare room. I'll paint it. I think it's time it stopped being hers." And with that, she walked away, slow, unsure, but with a paint catalog in hand. 2 days later, Maya came home from work and found drop cloths laid neatly on the floor, a half-used can of light sage in the corner, and Jules humming softly to herself as she painted over the pale rose walls their mother had always loved. It was strange. It was sacrilegious. It was healing. Maya stood in the doorway and watched her sister's brushstrokes smooth over old grief like balm. For the first time in weeks, the house didn't feel like it was holding its breath. But Maya wasn't done. Not yet. Because beneath her bed, the letter to the estate lawyer was still there, folded, waiting. And Maya knew that truth had its own kind of patience. The next weekend, they hosted a dinner. It was Maya's idea. Jules had hesitated, visibly unsure, but Maya had insisted. Just Natalie and Aunt Elaine. Nothing dramatic. She'd said it with a half-smile, like she was daring herself to mean it. The table was set with their mother's china, ivory porcelain, blue roses at the rim. The plates that hadn't seen daylight since hospice, since the sound of clinking cutlery had become too sharp for Maya's grief. Jules placed the forks on the wrong side and laughed at herself, and Maya corrected them without saying a word. It was a dinner, yes, but it was also a performance. Natalie arrived first, a tall shadow in a navy pantsuit, briefcase tucked under her arm like she came straight from court. She hugged Maya with that careful affection of someone who knew too much. Aunt Elaine came after, perfume trailing behind her like memory, floral, powdery, and familiar in a way that made Maya's chest ache. She was thinner now, older, her hands spotted and elegant. She kissed both girls on the cheek and said, "This place still smells like lemon wood polish and guilt." Jules laughed. Maya didn't. The food was good. Roasted chicken, charred green beans, a lemon tart Jules had burned the first time and remade before Maya saw. The wine was better. Aunt Elaine insisted on a third glass. Natalie watched Jules more than she spoke. "So," Elaine said, setting her wineglass down. "How long are you staying, Jules?" Jules looked at Maya. Maya looked at her plate. "I'm not sure yet," Jules said quietly. "I'm trying to make things right." Elaine nodded. "It's never too late for that, unless you wait too long." Natalie raised her glass, not unkindly, to not waiting too long. They clinked, and the room felt warmer. But as the night drew to a close and coats were fetched, Natalie lingered behind, while Jules and Elaine spoke in the living room. "I read the letter again," Natalie whispered. "You know you have a case." "I know." "Then why haven't you filed it?" Maya glanced toward the hallway. "Because sometimes the fight isn't about winning," she murmured. "It's about whether I can sleep after." Later that night, Jules knocked on her bedroom door. Not the spare room. Maya's room. She held an old journal, worn leather cover, stitched spine. It had belonged to their mother. "I found this when I was clearing the closet," Jules said, her voice small. "I think she was writing it toward the end." Maya took it gently. She sat on her bed, flipped through a few pages. One line leapt out at her. "If I go first, I hope Maya knows I always depended on her more. Not because I loved Jules less, but because Maya never asked for anything. And maybe that was a mistake." Maya pressed her fingers to the words, as if she could feel her mother's voice rising through the page. "I'm sorry," Jules said. "For all of it, for not asking, for assuming you'd always hold everything up." Maya didn't answer right away, because forgiveness wasn't a lightning strike, it was a slow erosion. But something shifted in her chest. "I'm not your mother," she said finally, "and I won't be." "I know," but I'll help you. Just don't lie to me again." "I won't," Jules promised. This time Maya believed her. The next morning, Jules made breakfast, burnt toast, too much pepper in the eggs. Maya ate it anyway. They sat in the backyard with coffee, watching a neighbor's dog dig a hole through a flower bed. "Still think you're going to repaint the room, Sage?" Maya asked. Jules sipped her coffee. "Number, I think I'll go with something new, something that doesn't remind either of us of the past." Maya nodded. "Maybe we turn it into something else," she said. Jules looked at her. "Like what?" "I don't know yet, but maybe not a bedroom." "Then what?" Maya smiled faintly. "Something that starts with both of us." Jules laughed. "That sounds like the tagline for a very dramatic soap opera." Maya shrugged. "Maybe, but I'm tired of mourning every room in this house." And for the first time in a long time, they both looked at the future with something that resembled hope. But just beneath that, still tucked away under Maya's bed, was the folded letter. The one thing Jules didn't know still existed, and Maya didn't yet know whether she would ever need. It started with a voicemail. Maya was on her lunch break, half listening to a podcast while scanning invoices on her monitor, when her phone buzzed. The number was familiar. Ryan, Jules's ex. She hadn't heard from him in nearly 2 months, not since the night Jules showed up with red-rimmed eyes and duffel bags. She almost deleted the message without listening. Almost. But curiosity always had claws. She stepped into the office stairwell, where the walls smelled like mildew, and the lights flickered faintly, and pressed play. "Maya, hey, look, I don't mean to start anything, but I thought you should know. Jules came by last night, said she wanted to talk. We didn't. Not really. She cried, said she made mistakes, but then she asked about the lease, about the account. I think you should ask her what she's planning." The message ended in static. Maya stood frozen, the sounds of her workplace muffled behind the door. The stairwell suddenly felt colder than it should have. That night, Jules was in the spare room, still painting, still humming under her breath like she was in control of her life again. The walls were now a cool sea glass green. The dresser was gone. In its place sat a drafting table and a second-hand sewing machine they'd picked up from a flea market last weekend. "Ryan called me," Maya said from the doorway. Jules flinched just slightly. "Did he?" Maya stepped inside, arms folded. "He said you were asking about the account, the lease. What's going on?" Jules set down her paintbrush. "It's not what you think." "Then explain it." Jules sighed, rubbed her forehead. "The apartment was in both our names. I didn't want him to screw me over. He's months behind on payments. I needed to check if I was still legally responsible." "That's all?" Jules hesitated too long. Maya's stomach dropped. "What did you ask him for, Jules?" I just asked if he'd consider buying me out of the furniture. That's it. I paid for most of it." "And the trust money?" Maya's voice was sharp now. "Are you planning to cash out more?" "No," Jules snapped. "Not unless I have to." "You mean not unless I don't find out?" Jules's face darkened. "Maya, I'm trying. You said you wanted honesty. I came clean. I'm working. I'm painting this damn room like it's penance, and you still don't trust me." Maya walked over to the drafting table and picked up the journal. Their mother's handwriting stared up at her, looping and soft. She held it up. "She trusted you too." The silence hit like a slammed door. The next morning Jules was gone. Her phone left behind, the spare room half painted, a note on the kitchen table, written on the back of a grocery list. "I need space. I'm not running, just thinking. I'll be back. Don't call Ryan. Don't worry. Please." Maya stared at the note until the words blurred. It was happening again. That weightless, falling feeling. She thought about the letter under her bed, about the trust, the betrayal, the half-repaired bridge they'd tried to build. And she thought about the journal. That evening, Maya went to Natalie's office. She dropped the envelope on her cousin's desk like it was made of fire. "I need you to file it," she said. Natalie looked up slowly. Are you sure? I was willing to let it go. I really was. But if she keeps playing games with the truth, what else is she hiding? How can I trust her? Natalie studied her face for a long time. You're not doing this for the money anymore. No, Maya said. I'm doing it for the version of me that spent years begging for scraps while my sister lived in a separate reality. Natalie opened the envelope. Her brows furrowed. You updated the claim? I added a line, Maya said. I want it all reviewed. Every transfer, every silent account. If she has anything else tucked away, I want to know. Natalie nodded. It's going to get ugly. It already is. 2 days passed. No word from Jules. Maya tried not to check her location every hour, tried not to reread the letter, tried not to wonder if she'd made the right choice or if she was simply trading silence for justice. Then, on the third night, Maya returned home to find the porch light on and the sewing machine humming. Jules sat in the spare room, face pale, hair unwashed, but she was there. She looked up as Maya entered. You filed it, she said. Maya didn't respond. Jules nodded like she already knew. I guess I deserved that. Maya crossed her arms. Why did you really go see Ryan? Jules looked at her lap. Because I found out there's another account. From Mom. It was supposed to be for both of us. He helped me get access to it before she passed. I kept it quiet. How much? 32,000. Maya's breath caught. I was going to use it to move, start over, but I couldn't do it. Not after everything. Not after this house. This room. Maya sat down slowly on the edge of the old bed frame. You lied again. I did. I can't keep doing this, Maya said, her voice cracking. I know, Jules whispered, but I'm not running this time. If you want to burn everything down, go ahead, I won't stop you. But I'll stay here, in this room. I'll keep sewing. I'll keep painting. I'll wait for you to see me as someone worth rebuilding with. Maya looked at her, really looked. Then she stood and walked out. For 3 days they didn't speak. They moved around each other like ghosts, present but weightless. Maya spent her hours at work in spreadsheets she couldn't concentrate on, rereading Natalie's email outlining the legal next steps of the estate challenge. The filing was in motion. The review had begun. Jules, meanwhile, stayed buried in fabric and thread. The sewing machine became a metronome of guilt, soft, steady, and inescapable. The spare room was changing. Again. This time, bolts of fabric were draped across the bed like abandoned thoughts. A dress form stood near the window, slowly wearing the shape of something Jules hadn't shown Maya yet. Maya noticed the sticky note tacked to the closet door one morning. Start with the stitch you trust most. It was their mother's quote. She used to say it while hemming curtains or mending the elbows of Maya's sweaters. It used to mean something simple. Now it meant something else entirely. On Friday evening, a letter arrived. Not an email, not a notification. A letter from the lawyer handling their father's trust. Maya tore it open at the kitchen table, her hands trembling. Jules watched from the hallway, arms crossed, bare feet silent on the hardwood. Inside were 3 sentences that stopped the world. In addition to the previously disclosed trust, a secondary account in the decedent's name has been identified. According to the attached records, both beneficiaries were named. However, only one party accessed the funds in the year following his death. Maya read it twice, then a third time. She looked up at Jules. You knew about this too? Jules didn't deny it. I was scared, she said. It was small compared to the other trust. I thought maybe it wasn't meant for both of us. But then I used it. For the funeral expenses, for the lawyer, and I didn't tell you. Maya's eyes filled with heat. I sold my car for that funeral. I know, Jules whispered. Maya stood up. Don't, Jules said quickly, stepping forward. Don't throw me out, please. I'm not that person anymore. Maya laughed bitterly. You keep saying that like you're not still lying. I'm not, I swear. I kept everything after that. Every receipt, every record. I started documenting it all after the trust came out. You just didn't want me to see the truth unless I found it myself. Jules didn't answer. Her silence was louder than any scream. That night, Maya opened the envelope from Natalie again. She stared at the signature line of the official claim, her name printed in bold black ink. All it needed was her signature to proceed. But instead of signing it, she placed it beside her bed, next to the journal, next to a half-filled mug of cold chamomile tea. Then she lay down, and for the first time in weeks, she cried. The next morning, the sewing machine was gone. Maya panicked. She ran into the spare room. But Jules wasn't gone. She was outside, on the front lawn, setting up a long, low table with handmade signs and garment bags hanging from a rack she'd built from broom handles and string. "What is this?" Maya asked from the porch, arms folded. "A pop-up," Jules said. "Just one day. Just to try. I've been designing late at night. I made every piece in the spare room." Maya stepped closer. The garments were simple but beautiful, soft cotton dresses, linen jumpsuits, skirts stitched with care. The tags all bore the same name, Stitched Room. Beneath it, in smaller letters, Mended by hand, healed by thread. Maya picked up a scarf, pale blue, the exact color of the sea glass walls. "You're doing this here?" Jules nodded. "It started here. It has to begin here." People began trickling by, neighbors, co-workers, even Natalie, who gave Maya a long look that said, "I told you so," without words. Jules smiled. She spoke with grace Maya hadn't seen in her before. She moved like someone with something to prove, but not to the crowd, to herself. That night, after the table was packed up and the last dress folded into a canvas tote, Jules placed an envelope on the kitchen table. "I'm returning what I owe," she said. "All of it, with interest. I kept records like I said, and I included a notarized letter disclosing everything about the second account. I want it on the record. If you still want to file, I won't fight you." Maya opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a detailed ledger, and a check, and something else. A handwritten note. "Start with the stitch you trust most. Maybe that's not me, but maybe someday it could be again." Maya didn't speak. She just placed the envelope next to the unsigned claim, and turned off the kitchen light. 1 week later, the letter was still on Maya's nightstand. Still unsigned. The morning sun streaked across her comforter as she sat with a cup of coffee that had gone lukewarm in her hands. The journal was open beside her, her mother's words now creased from rereading, underlined, dog-eared. There was one entry Maya kept returning to. "One day, they'll need each other more than they realize. I just hope by then they've learned to be gentle with one another." Maya had always assumed that if there were an ending to their story, it would be sharp, dramatic, like something crashing through glass. A courtroom, a rupture, a forever line drawn through blood. But now the ending looked more like choices made quietly in the early light, when no one else was watching. That evening, Maya entered the spare room. It no longer smelled like lemon polish or dust. It smelled like fabric, lavender detergent, and something warmer, like possibility. The walls were fully painted. The dress form was clothed in a finished linen jumpsuit with wide sleeves and stitched poetry on the hem. The room was no longer a shrine or a hiding place. It was something new. Jules looked up from the floor where she was pinning fabric against paper patterns. "You signed it?" she asked. Maya shook her head. Jules's shoulders sagged, not in relief, but in disbelief. "I deserve it if you do," she whispered. "I know," Maya replied, "but you're already living with the consequences, and I think that matters more than a court ever could." She walked in slowly, stood beside the sewing table. "I'm still angry," she continued, "still grieving, but I see you trying, every day, not for me, for you. That's the only version of change that counts." Jules looked up. "So, what now?" Maya smiled faintly. "Now," she said, "you keep stitching, and I'll keep healing, and maybe this room, this whole house, can stop holding ghosts and start holding grace." 3 months passed. The spare room became Stitched Room Studio, complete with a new door sign, and an Etsy store that gained traction faster than either of them expected. Jules took orders online, hosted workshops with neighborhood teens, and once even donated custom robes to the women's shelter nearby. Maya didn't file the claim. Instead, she wrote her own letter, addressed not to the courts, but to herself, then tucked it inside the back of the journal. I could have chosen revenge, and I would have been right. But instead I chose something harder. I chose to stay, to rebuild, to believe that change is earned, not demanded. Maybe forgiveness is not a clean act, but a long one, like a hem restitched each time it frays, but it holds. On the anniversary of their mother's passing, Maya and Jules stood in the garden, tea in hand. They'd planted marigolds that morning, her favorite. As the wind rustled through the tall grass, Jules reached over, not asking, and held Maya's hand. No words, just the knowing, and Maya, who had carried so many endings, finally let one go. Because this wasn't a story of betrayal anymore. It was a story of repair, and the spare room was no longer a wound. It was a beginning,